Hello, everybody. Welcome to Woman Up. My name's Leah, and I'm joined by Sue. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Leah. How are you today?
Can't complain apart from the usual nonsense, but which we will get to.
Yeah.
We are delighted to be joined today by Carole Ann from the Lesbian Action Group. Based in Victoria, Australia, the Lesbian Action Group are committed to fighting the new homophobia. The homophobia that comes wrapped in a sparkly, glittery rainbow package calling itself gender identity. This homophobia comes in the form of kindness and inclusion, says lesbians must accept sexual relations with men who call themselves lesbians, or else they're labelled as bigoted, transphobic, fascist Nazis. The kind of homophobia that totally denies the existence of biological sex and therefore denies the existence of same-sex attraction. The Lesbian Action Group are currently having to spend their time fighting for the fundamental and basic rights of lesbians, real lesbians, the adult human female kind, to be able to organise lesbian-only female events. Lesbian Action Group Melbourne recently applied to the Australian Human Rights Commission for a 5-year exemption to the Sex Discrimination Act so they could organise a female-only event that by definition excludes men, to celebrate International Lesbian Day at the Victorian Pride Center. This is the response from the Australian Human Rights Commission. Quote, "The Commission is of the preliminary view that it will not grant the temporary exemption sought by the Lesbian Action Group for a period of 5 years to host a proposed event on the 15th of October 2023 to celebrate International Lesbian Day and restrict attendees, organisers and advertising of the event to lesbians born female only, and thereafter to hold regular lesbian born female only events," end quote. So the idea of a man calling himself a lesbian is so ridiculous, so stupid, so absolutely offensive. It's a concept that shouldn't have even been taken seriously by anyone for a second, but here we are. So before we talk about the absolute nonsense, the sham of the Australian Human Rights Commission denying lesbians the right to organise public events for females only, Carole Ann, can you please take us back in time? Tell the people watching how long men pretending to be lesbians and infiltrating lesbian-only spaces has been a real issue for lesbians, and when did this really start to affect lesbians gathering and organising female-only spaces?
Well, we've been dealing with this for decades, at least 3 decades, in Australia anyway. There's evidence, footage from overseas where it was, back into the 70s. But for us in Australia, we started organising national lesbian festivals and camps, celebrations, all sorts of things, around about 89. And we had some wonderful gatherings. We had thousands of lesbians turning up all over the country. This was a national thing, and they were annual lesfests, we called them, and they then morphed into like 10-day camps. Wow. There was all sorts of things going on, market days, art exhibitions, book launches, discussion groups, meetups. It was all over the country. We even had 2 events, concerts at the Sydney Opera House for lesbians. Then someone had a group had a great idea of, we need a lesbian space. So across the country, lesbians raised money, and don't quote me, but I think we got up to $250,000 to buy in Sydney a warehouse to convert into a lesbian space. The warehouse was bought. I mean, this is just astonishing because lesbians generally don't have a lot of money.
Mm.
We're not gay men who do have some money behind them, generally speaking. So the warehouse was bought, started to set it up, and then some transgenders saying they were lesbian mucked it up, basically.
What year was that?
That'd be the early 90s.
Right. Okay.
But at the time, though, it wasn't illegal to meet as lesbians like it is now.
Well,
So 2013, they changed the Sex Discrimination Act. So prior to that, it wasn't considered discrimination not to allow these men that say they're women, fully intact men say they're women, to come into lesbian spaces.
no, well, see, that's where it gets a bit murky, because in 2000, back in the old century, okay, 2003 is when one of our events was challenged in Victoria. We were going to have a 10-day event. It was challenged by a transgender in Victoria and taken to the Victorian Equal Opportunity Tribunal. So even then, that's before 2013, they were challenging us and taking us to the tribunal. A couple of years later, it happened again, and that time we had to spend money on defending the gathering that we'd had. 2003, we got the challenge. We were told, it came out of unexpectedly, we were told that we could go for an exemption. So we did that in the Victorian Tribunal. Quite naive. We had no legal backing, no funding, no whatever. But we were told we could go for an exemption. We did. And we were given an exemption. So even in those days, you had to have an exemption. The thing is, to publicly advertise an event is when you need an exemption. If you just want to gather amongst yourselves, have a private party, that's not included. Okay. But we wanted to advertise to all lesbians all over Australia. We wanted to let them know what was happening. So we applied for the exemption. The poor magistrate or judge or whatever they're called walked us through it because we had no idea, and granted our exemption. We didn't know that part of the process was to let them know that there had been a challenge. So another transgender group, then challenged us about the exemption we'd got, and it came out in that challenge that we hadn't notified about the original complainant, and so the exemption was just thrown out because of that technicality.
That's 2003.
That's 2003, yeah. And in 2004 or 5, I think, we had a gathering. Somehow the flyers for it had gone off to a some conference or other, because after 2003 we actually cancelled that gathering that we'd planned because we weren't allowed to have it, and we didn't want to risk any further challenges and litigation and goodness knows what they would throw at us. So we cancelled that event and then decided that we would go underground, that we would just have private parties, that we would just use our own networks and advertise through our own networks. Well, a couple of years later, as I said, someone's flyer about the event got out at a conference and was picked up by another transgender who then again took us to court about it. And that took several years and lots of thousands of dollars to challenge that. And we were granted, we did win in court, but only on the basis that it was a private party, not on the basis that we should be allowed to have these things without being challenged about it. It was only because we could prove that it was a private party and that flyer got out by mistake. So, yeah.
It's just really, where there's no human rights here, is there? It's man.
No, and going back to what I was saying originally about the warehouse and the money that was raised for that, because the transgenders got involved in that split the community. There was disagreements, and that warehouse had to be sold, and that money used, in other ways.
There were disagreements among the lesbians as well.
Well, just as today there are women and lesbians who are being kind to trans people, and saying that we're being unkind by wanting our own spaces. So they wanted to let trans people use that space as if it was their own, whereas we were the ones who'd raised the money for it.
And if you look at the Pride Center in Victoria,
exactly the same thing.
Center, it's not for LGB, is it? It's for the TRQA plus, so for the queer theory. So you've got no space. They may use you as a shield, but they certainly have no respect at all.
No. Well, the Pride Center actually refused our booking that we wanted to have an event to celebrate International Lesbian Day, which is October the 8th coming up. We wanted to have a celebration there, and they refused our booking for that because we weren't being kind to the men who want to come along. So
I don't know why they bother even having the L in the LGBTQIA plus.
Well, because there are some lesbians who are into that stuff. They're handmaidens. They've just sucked it, been sucked into it.
Quite a few of the friends that I've lost over this, for speaking out about this, are lesbians.
Yeah.
Why are they going along with this, in your opinion?
Same as women everywhere are going along with the erasure of women's spaces. It's the same thing. I don't understand them. But
do you think if gay men wanted to hold an event at the Pride Center for International
Gay Day,
Gay Day, do you think that they would be denied?
Probably, if they said it was exclusively for gay men,
Well, I looked on the website and it said that men have had exemptions granted for male only.
There's two pubs here in Victoria, the Peel and the Laird, and they both have exemptions. But like they put in for exemptions for gay men only or men only.
Yeah.
But I'm hazy on the details, but I think they scrutinise people at the door. If someone looks like a man, they can go in. But they won't let in the transgender people who are, have breasts or any of that. So yes, they're allowed to discriminate. They're allowed to say no to transgender people. I mean, I can't see why the transgender women would want to go to a gay male pub. I mean, it just does your head in to trying to get around all this stuff, because, you know, like if you think, okay, so you've got a man, a male, who is attracted, who's a heterosexual male attracted to women. So then he says he's a woman, still attracted to women, but now he's not a heterosexual man anymore. He's a lesbian.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? It's just, it's a mental illness.
Yeah. And the other lot that we're not allowed to exclude are queer people, which, as we know, includes anyone who has pink hair or wears funny clothes or just thinks they're queer or whatever. So basically, anyone.
I wonder how they'd feel at Parliament House when they've got, you know, like a specific meeting for politicians and just the general public turn up and go, well, today I'm identifying as a politician. Yeah. You've got the right to exclude me from this meeting because I identify as the Prime Minister.
Yeah. I know.
So how far does this go?
I know.
Saying that is as insane as saying a man who's attracted to women but identifies as a woman is a lesbian. They're both insane.
Yeah.
No difference.
Yeah. And look, you know, if that's how they want to be, then who am I to say don't? Go and organise your own things.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, there are lots of things organised for them.
Yeah, there is.
Lots of things.
Yeah.
And and we self-exclude from those because we don't fit in there. So, you know, go for it if that's what they want to do. Have everybody in the world and their dog and their parrot and their pet lizard or whatever they want to do at their events, but don't stop us having ours.
If someone was having an event and they didn't want me there, I wouldn't want to be there. Like, you know, the intent.
There's nothing worse than being somewhere where you're really not wanted for a normal person.
But that's what they want, isn't it? It's about oppressing women.
Yeah.
And they want to make you feel uncomfortable. So the fact no one wants you there doesn't make any difference.
It's very hard for us to get into that mindset because it's so different to how we feel.
Yeah.
So tell us about the exemption that you applied for recently. And obviously is it a full rejection if it's a preliminary decision? No,
not yet.
Okay.
No. Yeah, there was a group of us got together, of lesbians, just got together for a bit of a discussion group. We're part of the mob that, you know, have been doing this for 3 decades. And as I said, for the last 2 decades, we've been totally underground. We've still gathered and we have a very strong community. But it's all been underground, and we haven't been able to publicly advertise any of our events. So we felt like we've missed out on generations of young lesbians. They just don't know that there has been, and that still is, a whole culture, a lesbian culture there for them to tap into. So we decided at this discussion group that we were just sick of it. Let's not be underground anymore. Let's make a stand and push back. And so it was just a throwaway line, because 2 of us were part of the original exemption application 2 decades ago. And I said, oh, well, let's go for another exemption. And it just took off. And this is only, 3 months ago. So this has steamrolled out of control. One of our members took it on to follow it up and check out what we needed to do. And she then proceeded to write the application. And before we knew it, we had an application into the Australian Human Rights Commission. so then the next step was to round up as many people as possible to write support letters for our application. They have now looked at all those letters to support us, and also the other side then mobilised and got some letters in opposing our exemption application. So then I think it was last Monday, the preliminary finding, because that's what they do. They put everything up on their website, the fors and the againsts, and then they look at all that, and then they often at that stage they will invite both sides to try to have a mediation and come to some sort of agreement. But they said that it was so obvious that there were two opposing sides who were not going to agree, that they went straight to a preliminary view, which is the thing that's up on the website now, which has said in their preliminary view of all the evidence, they are going to reject our application.
So, Carole, people, the public can put in submissions now to support you, can't they? So, and that closes on Tuesday, the 3rd of October. So if anyone's watching this and wants to put in a letter or a submission supporting.
Yeah.
And how do they do that?
Well, you can, if you're so legal minded, you can actually look at the preliminary finding on their website. But if you're not,
if you just type in Lesbian Action Group into Google, it comes up in one of the first ones.
Is it?
Yeah.
Does it? Okay, good. That's easy. Yes, we have till Tuesday for everybody, men, women, lesbians, whoever can write in and respond to that preliminary view. And it doesn't have to be a legal letter. It doesn't have to go into, any legal stuff at all. Those who are up to that certainly respond to it in the legal sense. But it can just be a personal letter saying, I totally object to this preliminary rejection. It's absurd, it's blah, blah, blah. Whatever comes out of your pen, write it in and send it to legal@humanrights.gov.au by Tuesday. We're just trying to get as many responses as possible, just to let them know that people are watching and people disagree, that this is.
Yeah, so I mean, the public don't know about this, and a couple of people I know, I've mentioned about the preliminary decision. They don't believe that I'm telling the truth. They go, "That's not true. That's not true." And
tell them to look on the
I mean,
Australian.
No, once I explained it to them, and they're just going, "I can't believe this," but you've been dealing with this for 20 years, basically.
So get anyone, friends, family, neighbours, people off the street, anyone in your networks, just get them writing in, so that we want to bombard them with let them know that they're being watched. People don't agree with this. We don't actually expect them to change that decision because they are totally captured.
It's not really a human rights commission anymore, is it?
It isn't. We've had legal advice that piece of writing that they say is their preliminary response is absolutely rubbish in terms of a legal argument. It's just, they're not even trying. They're not trying to hide their bias.
The same with the ombudsman as well. These arms of government that are supposed to be, at arm's length, but they're captured. They're now advocates for queer theory.
some of them have just blatant conflict of interests, like they're on boards of groups that are against well, our side, you know, to put it in non-legal terms. They're on the boards of these other organisations.
There'd be no conflict of interest.
No. Yeah.
But the government's allowing it to happen, so
yeah,
very difficult.
This is an agency that is supposedly enforcing a Sex Discrimination Act to protect women against discrimination, and it's just it's not, nowhere in their response, in their preliminary finding, do they mention sex discrimination. And yet we put the application in on behalf of, and I shouldn't even have to say this, lesbians who are born female. So we were very specific about who it was for, which was sex-based, and they have not mentioned that at all. They've gone for gender identity, which we didn't even mention in our application, and sexual orientation, which they are reinterpreting as anyone who has attraction to anyone else, really. I mean, you know, if a man can be called a lesbian and that's his sexual orientation, then it makes a mockery of the whole term sexual orientation.
It's disgraceful. It's disgusting.
That just wants to oppress women.
It's disgusting the way that women and lesbians are being treated. Think about what this is doing to the young girls that are growing up, who are going to grow up to be lesbians, or the young women who struggle with it through, you know, through their teenage years. To see this level of discrimination against lesbians, no wonder they're turning to sex changes, hormones, and removing their breasts.
It's conversion therapy. It's obvious. I mean, that's what they want to do. They want to break down all those boundaries. They want to isolate the kids from elders who can tell them there is another culture, there is another way of doing it. It's really insidious.
I was on a webinar yesterday from the United States, and there were mothers whose children have transitioned, and they said so much of this is driven by homophobia, and that's why, you know, and that's why young lesbians won't identify as lesbians, because they're afraid of being labelled a lesbian. So they identify as the opposite sex because of this really ingrained homophobia that this queer theory instills.
When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, the worst thing you wanted to be called was a lesbian. And all throughout, I wasn't sure what I was when I was growing up. I was very confused about it all, as so many are. And all throughout my 20s, I had relationships with women. I know for a fact, if this ideology was around when I was growing up, I would have taken it up like that. Now I'm married to a man and I'm having children. I wouldn't have my children if this was around when I was growing up. The thought of what this is doing to young girls who are confused or just haven't made their mind up, they struggle with their sexuality, this is just making it so much worse. The level of stigma that this adds to lesbians is just off the scale. It's unbelievable how lesbians are being
sterilise them. You know, these young lesbians, they sterilise them so they can never have children, cut their breasts off. It's like a punishment for being same-sex attracted. You can't be. You've got to have been born in the wrong body.
It makes my heart bleed to see those young ones. And That's why we want to make this as public as possible.
100%. Everybody needs to write that submission, even if it's
Yeah.
a couple of lines or a paragraph.
Yeah,
just saying that
absolutely.
you disagree with it, that will
Yeah.
count as one
Yeah.
against this
Yeah.
stupid decision.
Yeah.
So the amount of spaces that are being lost as well across Australia has just been shocking. And if you go to the LGB Alliance Lost Lesbian Spaces project, you can see the map of all the lesbian spaces that used to exist in purple, and then the ones in green that still exist, and it's 99% have disappeared.
Yeah, there aren't any. In the heyday, it was just wonderful.
Yeah.
It really was. And you know, with same-sex marriage, we thought, okay, so we can breathe now. It's you know, not all of us agree with marriage, but you know, at least we're accepted. We're part of the community. We're part of, you know, the big wide world, and we can relax. We can have our events. We can have our meetups and whatever. But no, it's just got worse.
So do you think that people are less accepting of lesbian and gay, LGB, because of the TQI plus?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's going to be, if not already, a big backlash against well, they keep lumping us under that LGB alphabet soup label, and most
the shield for these people.
Yeah. Well, you know, they've hidden behind us. They use us still. They see the Pride Center and that alphabet soup label, and they think that that's us, and it's not. And we have to get that word out there that it is not. They do not speak for us. In fact, they do not want us as part of their elite.
But why would they want someone that's same-sex attracted when they say that's not possible? Because
I know.
You've been born into the wrong body. So there's a massive clash between LGB, us, well, B's attracted to either, but LG is same-sex attracted. The TIQA is going, no, you were born in the wrong body. You've got to transition to a male now.
Yeah.
So it's just so
I think it's also the TQ. I think the intersex people don't want to.
They don't
have a bar of it, and you know, they're such a minority that this is screwing them up as well. So it's the TQ who are the push behind this. They want everything, and they are using the rest of us as a shield.
But even with the T's, there's quite a number of transsexuals that don't agree with this, you know, so the T's being taken over as well. They're just cute.
I know. I just wish the transsexuals would speak up more. I really do. And the transgenders who disagree with this, the ones who know that they haven't actually changed sex, they're just carrying out whatever they personally need to
that's right,
to carry out in life, and
without oppressing anyone else. So they just want to blend in, not be a threat to women. They still respect women. They understand that they're male-bodied. But these men go, no, we're biological women.
Yeah.
And as India Willoughby said, just remove the testosterone and you become a biological woman. And you just think, where's the rational thinking here? It's just...
Well, there's no rational thinking with that. That's just ridiculous. And
but the people that are supporting it, that aren't part of that...
It's a very small minority of people that are supporting that.
Yeah, there are. But they seem to control this small proportion of people are controlling the narrative. And like we know we get out there with street action, but I really think that, you know, you tell people in the public about what's happening to lesbians and they cannot get their head around that men are calling themselves lesbians and that lesbians can't meet, that they're having these male bodies being forced on them. It really is coercive rape, isn't it? Because you know why the men are there.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit there and have a cup of tea. They want to hit on the women.
Yeah.
But the lesbians aren't, surely they're not getting lucky with any of these women, because a lesbian will not have sex with a man. Full stop.
Well, then they're not, if they do,
they're not lesbian.
Not a lesbian.
100%.
Yeah.
So do you
know,
think these lesbian spaces have been taken over by bisexual women who are happy to have these men there?
I reckon it's probably
no,
true.
I think there are some, probably many, actual lesbians who wouldn't have sex with any of these so-called transgender lesbians, but want to be kind and don't want anyone to be unkind to them.
Well, and they see the backlash as well that comes with saying no.
Well, yes. I mean, fear and intimidation play a huge part in this. I've just this week I've had a reminder of it because there was a Freedom of Information request put into the Australian Human Rights Commission to see all the submissions that weren't published, because the Human Rights Commission didn't put on their website all the
which is very strange. Very strange. And then they said, wasn't it, that there were too many that was.
Yeah. So someone put in a Freedom of Information request, and that sent absolute panic among the networks, among women who had put in submissions
with their details.
And it just showed me it's like a mass domestic violence situation. They intimidate, they punish, they are violent, and just the thought that was the purpose behind this Freedom of Information request just sent women into absolute fear and panic. It turns out that it was actually a woman who has put in the request because she wanted to see the other side's
what they had to
responses, because she suspected a lot of those would have been just form letters. Whereas I know, because people sent copies to me, I know that the ones coming from lesbians and from everyone who was not part of an organisation, but it was just a personal response. I know that they all wrote their own response, their own letter of support from their heart. Whereas I reckon the other side would have been just.
And that's probably why the Human Rights Commission decided not to put the individual submissions, because I found that very strange.
Yeah, that's why this woman wanted to find out. She wanted their letters to see. But yes, the level of panic and fear and threat was just scary. It was scary to see. It was like, there's that thing of we have been so cowed down that whether it's going to happen to you or not, you're just too frightened to stand up. And when you do stand up, you're just fearful that you're going to get knocked down and punched in the guts.
Yeah.
And it's.
And that could be literally too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Women, if these men know who you are and they see, well, Leah, you've been accosted by one, a few months ago.
Yeah, they are brazen.
Yeah.
They now feel so entitled to just approach you in the middle of the day in broad daylight and
with other people
and shout in your face.
Yeah, because they know they'll get away with it.
Yeah.
So what government has done is actually it's incited them in a way, because when the authorities aren't taking action against these people for what they do.
Look at Dan Andrews.
Yeah.
What he said about the event that happened in Melbourne.
That rally was a nasty, hateful event long before anyone offered up the Nazi salute. Right? Be really clear about this. And you might say that the Liberal Party, are increasingly becoming a nasty, hateful little rabble. Why would you make it harder for trans Victorians? The notion that people are choosing this for fun, it's so offensive, it's so cruel, it's not mainstream thinking, it's not the big-heartedness that our state is so well known for. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
I was there, and it was just absolutely astonishing the next day
It was
to see how it was misinterpreted and used against us.
Yeah.
It was like, I was there. That's not that's not the place I was. That's
You were a marshal.
No, I wasn't a marshal, but if that level of gaslighting and threat is coming from the highest person in the state, then of course you're going to be absolutely fearful. Of course, women are going to find a way to survive in this world, and so many of them do it by becoming allies or just shutting up. Just, I mean, that's the explanation that I can find for a lot of the women who either go along with it or don't speak up. It's fear and intimidation, and they're being very successful with it.
Yeah, they are. And politicians, need to stop gaslighting everyone and protecting these men. It's just so wrong.
Well, in Melbourne, after that rally, we had not only Dan Andrews, who, by the way, flew the the trans flag from Parliament House the next day. And handed out nearly $1 million to the poor trans people who had been traumatized by the whole event for their mental health.
Oh my God, I didn't realise that.
Yes, the very next day. But we also had Don Pasuto vilifying Moira Deeming and others. We had what's his name from the Greens, Adam Bant, also saying how awful we were, and Nazi supporters, like the whole lot of them, they just piled in. It was just like,
and I hope they all get sued for defamation, because
wouldn't it be good? Wouldn't it be good? Yeah.
There's just no evidence at all that the women had anything, and the men that attended Let Women Speak had anything to do with those Nazis. It was a massive setup, and it was to discredit the women.
But they were very successful. My granddaughter believes that I must be a Nazi because I was there. It's, very successful. How do you combat that?
I notice in Melbourne now, it was like when Dan Andrews, the day of his resignation, and there were those crowds that gathered outside of Parliament, and people walking past calling them Nazis because they were glad that that Dan Andrews was going. And you just think, okay, you don't agree with someone now, they just automatically call you a Nazi. Let's condemn the Nazi salute and, the swastika, but let anyone call anyone else a Nazi. That's just as disrespectful as, using the swastika and doing the Nazi salute. Calling someone a Nazi is no different. Yet they're banning those two things, but call everyone else a Nazi.
Well, good riddance to the arsehole, because I'm so glad that I don't have to see his face. I'm not under any illusion that things are going to be any better now he's gone, but I'm just glad I don't have to see that face popping up. He makes me feel physically sick.
Yeah,
he's a disgusting man.
John Pasuto needs to go as well. He's a disgrace. He's just such a disgrace, that man, the way he bows and scrapes. But, he's a patron to Liberal Pride or something, and we all know that Pride doesn't mean LGBTIQ+, it's TIQA+, that he's a patron for. So he's really a trans activist.
Well, yes. I mean, I wouldn't be allowed to go along to Pride without intimidation if I wore a t-shirt that they didn't like.
Yeah.
So, none of this speaks for me or any of the lesbians that I know. So,
and the public needs to be aware of that, because I've seen groups that go, oh, they're trying to get to these kids and make them homosexual, and you go, what? It's not what they're doing. If the public needs to know that the LGB is not part of that acronym.
yeah.
And but the thing is, the LGB is getting the blame for it because you're at the start, so everyone's blaming the LGB.
Yeah,
so,
I love that Julie Zago article that she wrote, where she reversed the LGBTQ and made it with the L at the end, and it could even drop off completely.
Yeah, well, it could.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah.
Being pushed over the cliff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you see it getting any better, Carole? Do you
This
see
whole-
things turning around? What are your predictions or hopes?
As an activist, and I've been a lesbian activist for a long time, I have to keep some hope going,
Yeah.
because otherwise you wouldn't be an activist, would you?
Absolutely.
Having said that, though, I think this is, the lesbian issue is just one part of a huge global takeover. And
there needs to be more exposure to what lesbians are going through, because the public just doesn't realise it. They're starting to find out about the queer theory, but they're lumping the lesbians into that, and gay men as well. But there needs to be more public exposure to what is going on, because I really think that the children issue and the LGB issue and what's happening to you guys, I think, are really strong points that the public need to know, because when you talk about it, people just cannot fathom that this is happening. It just doesn't seem real. It's not rational. There's so much support now for LGB, and the TIQA plus are pissing the public off, and all the work that's been done over decades is being undone because people are so sick of seeing, like drag queens, and it's just too much. People who are just saturated, they've had enough. They need to know that it's not the LGB.
Well, that's what we're hoping this exemption application is going to do. We don't expect to win it. We know we're realistic. We don't expect to win it, so we're not actually in it to win an exemption. We're in it to highlight the issue, and we're in it to publicise it as far and wide as possible. So anyone who can do anything about using this action that we're doing to publicise the issue, then go for it.
Have you seen any media interest in this?
Yes, we've had a couple of articles in The Age down here, and in The Australian there was one. There's an article at the moment in Quillette. We've had, Stranger Bedfellows as usual with Rita Panahi on a couple of interviews on Sky News. So yes, there has been a bit, which has been quite uplifting. So those little cracks do give me hope. And you have to take hope wherever you can find it. So, I'm a bit of a Pollyanna on some levels, and, little bits give me hope. Yeah.
So do you think once this is done and dusted through the Human Rights Commission, there'll be some sort of campaign?
Oh, yes, this is an ongoing moving feast. We made the most of it when we put the application in. We made the most of it with this preliminary review. We made the most of it with the Pride Center refusing our booking. When the final finding comes out, we'll make the most of it. and we're hoping that more and more people who get to know it will come on board to just, we want it publicised as wide and far. We want it to go global. So we're in it for the publicity, not to necessarily, I mean, if by some magic we actually won this exemption, then we'll make the most of that as well. And we'll have the biggest celebration. But yes, that's not our aim.
This is like World War III, isn't it?
Yeah, I sometimes feel like one of the underground, you know, the underground networks of resistance. Yeah.
So the Lesbian Action Group is going to continue. So you've now got a Twitter page.
Have got a Twitter page. I'm a newbie there, and I don't quite know what I'm doing, but you know, we'll persevere.
You've got a Facebook page?
Not yet. We're about to get a web page, a website. Facebook page could be set up. Yes, so we want to, at the moment, there's 8 of us who are active. There's more in the background in Lesbian Action Group. But we want to grow that as well. So we want that to go nationwide. So we're going to set up little cells of lag all over Australia who can, you know, run their own events or do whatever action they want. So
and any of the public support lag, and you know, the more you just need the public to get in there and start pushing, realise what's going on, and this needs to stop.
Yes. Yeah. So no, we're not giving up. This is a rolling action, and we'll make the most of every step that we can. So get on board.
So can you keep applying for exemption after exemption then?
Theoretically. Yeah. I mean, this has gone to the Australian Human Rights Commission. So that's the federal human rights court. But each state has their own equal opportunity tribunal. So theoretically, yes, we could go for another exemption in Victoria, and other groups could go for exemptions in their state. Tasmania's already done that, but they could go for another one. We could just keep trying. Never giving up.
Politicians that are pushing this should be absolutely ashamed of themselves, what they're doing to people. Goes against human rights.
I believe it's unsustainable, so I think it will swing back. And the internet is there forever. Everyone's going to know who agreed with this ridiculousness.
And what did John Euler say? That the politicians that push this are useful idiots.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that people can do, is if you write a letter of support or a response, you could actually CC your local politician into that and tell them what is going on and why you're doing that. So get to the politicians. I know the LGB Australia Alliance do a lot of work with politicians, and
there's quite a few politicians that are just completely against it, but they're fearful as well. They're being controlled by fear. So even the leadership of the country is being controlled with this ideology.
It is. It is. Fear of being ostracised, of being cancelled.
And they've captured the Human Rights Commission, the Ombudsman. So even if you go for appeal, they're already captured. So there's no natural justice being done, because they've got a preconceived view of how they're going to treat anything, and it's always going to go in favour of men who want to oppress women. And that's really what they are. They're just misogynistic men. They're just pushing themselves on women who don't want them around.
And you know, look what the Australian Human Rights Commission did with the Sal Grover case. They've interfered and basically ruled out any definition of woman there, or female rather.
Yeah.
You know, we have to start saying female, not woman, because they.
But now these men are saying they're female, so they're taking that term as well.
Well,
So-
biological sex then. Female being a biological sex, but they've ruled that out, that there is no such thing as biological sex. I mean, they have no shame. They really have no shame, do they? They just
Because they're calling themselves legally female.
yeah.
No woman ever called herself legally female.
We don't have to. No.
We don't. We just are, and they just
Right.
are.
Well, you know, never give up, never surrender, keep pushing,
Yeah.
be that.
Fight with you for you, Carole Ann, and every other lesbian in the country. You know, we need more people to support lesbians, and not to the same extent, because gay men aren't having anywhere near the difficulties, are they?
Well, they're men. They still are having some difficulties, but they're men, so you know, not so much.
Yeah.
So
we need to support our LGBT, and ones that are same-sex attracted. They're right, not to. Yeah, and what do they call you? Genital. They call lesbians that won't have anything to do with
genital racists.
Yeah, or they've got a genital fetish.
I don't even understand that. I just it goes over my head. I don't know what
labels.
I know.
There's negative labels with everything. If they don't get their way, this negative label, you're a bigot, you're a Nazi, you're a transphobe. And look at them. Look at them.
It's water off a duck's back. I was talking to my husband last night about this. It's water off a duck's back when someone calls me a Nazi. How ridiculous and despicable is that?
Yeah.
Look,
I don't care what they call me now. Like I'm old enough and ugly enough to just think, do what you want. I've got nothing to lose. And I'm not shutting up anymore. So just get over yourself. I'm fed up with it.
And our army is growing of people that weren't aware. That's growing day by day. And so, and we're going to have an army of people. The numbers are going to build, and because the numbers build, they're not going to be afraid to come out. They'll feel safe in coming out. Yeah,
the more of us who stand up against this bullshit, then the braver others will be. So we just need more of us standing up and not cowering to their threats.
Throughout history, the LGBT haven't had it hard enough.
Yeah.
So what did you never really had a grace period, did you?
Well, you know what? Throughout history, trans have always been there throughout history, and you know who won all those rights for LGBT? It was the trans.
Claimed all that too, haven't they? All the wins throughout history when they weren't there.
Yeah,
they've claimed like with Stonewall and things like that. They've claimed that they were the ones that won all these rights, and there was nothing seen in history.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any rights if it wasn't for them, though.
They rewrite history, they rewrite our language, they rewrite everything.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah. If this isn't a men's movement, I don't know what is. It's just it's patriarchy and misogyny on steroids is what I reckon.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Carole Ann, for everything you do and are doing and have done. And thanks for coming to talk to us. Hopefully we can get a few more people to write in some submissions. I'll put the details of how everyone can do that in the description as well, and where they can find you and everything. Just please, everyone, it's so important. Just get that submission written in. It will take, if you just 5 minutes, and it will be done. And it will really, really help.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I love your work too. So, you're moving mountains up there. And I loved being up there the other week, Sue, and
I
meeting
met
you.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great because IWD had that conference and
Yeah.
it was great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, don't forget, everyone, our next Speaker's Corner is on the 8th of October, Sunday, 12.
Oh, that's International Lesbian Day. So make a special day of it.
Yes, we will.
We're
Okay.
going to in Melbourne. We're going to make a special day, even though the Pride Center refused our booking. We're still going to have celebrations. So
Absolutely.
you make a special International Lesbian Day celebration of that.
We
Speak
will.
out.
Definitely
Yeah.
will. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, then, ladies. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye then.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, see you next time. Bye.